There are moments in your life that divide everything into before and after. Moments when a single glance changes the chemistry of your blood, when one touch rewrites the map of your skin, when you discover that desire isn't just a feeling, it's a force that can unmake you entirely. I was 28 years old when I learned what it meant to truly want someone, and the man who taught me was the last person I should have ever wanted. His name was Michael. He was 46, and he was my father's best friend. This is the story of the summer I learned to burn. The first time I saw him after all those years, I was standing in my childhood kitchen, jet-lagged and exhausted from a 13-hour flight from London. I'd come home to Connecticut for the summer to figure out what came next. After the breakup, after the career that had stalled, after realizing that the life I'd built overseas felt like someone else's clothes that didn't quite fit, my father's voice carried in from the deck. "She's finally home.
Welcome
Come
home,
meet her
my
properly."
daughter.
It's been what, 12 years? I remember smoothing down my wrinkled linen dress, running fingers through travel-worn hair, expecting to greet some vague memory from my teenage years. Instead, Michael stepped through the sliding glass door, and the air in the room changed. He was tall. I'd forgotten that. Over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that makes a space feel smaller just by entering it. His hair was salt and pepper now, swept back from a face that time had carved into something more interesting than handsome. Sharp jaw, lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling then. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Little Emma," he said, and his voice was deeper than I remembered, textured like good whiskey. Not so little anymore. When he crossed the kitchen to embrace me, the kind of casual hug that family friends share, I caught the scent of him. Sandalwood and something warm, something that made me want to lean closer instead of pulling away. His arms were solid around me for just a moment, and when we separated, his hand lingered at the small of my back for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "It's good to see you," I managed, and hated how breathless I sounded. His eyes were gray, storm cloud gray, and they held mine for a moment too long before he smiled, a slow, careful smile, and stepped back. "Your dad's told me you're staying for the summer. That's good. He's missed you." The way he said it made me wonder if he meant something else entirely. Over dinner that night on the deck, surrounded by citronella candles and the sound of crickets, I learned that Michael had divorced 3 years ago, that he lived alone now in the restored farmhouse 2 miles down the road, that he still ran his architecture firm in the city but spent most of his time working from home these days. I tried not to watch the way his hands moved when he talked, tried not to notice the way his eyes kept finding mine across the table, then sliding away as if he'd been caught at something. My father was oblivious, delighted to have his old friend and his daughter in the same place again, telling stories from their college days that I'd heard 100 times. But underneath the comfortable rhythm of old friendship, I felt something else, humming in the air between Michael and me. Something neither of us acknowledged. Something dangerous. The second week of June arrived with a heat wave that made the air feel thick and liquid. I'd fallen into a routine. Mornings writing in the screened porch, afternoons by the pool, evenings helping my father with his garden. Simple, peaceful, exactly what I'd needed, until Michael started coming by more often. Just checking on the old man, he'd say with that careful smile, but his eyes would find me immediately. Track me as I moved through the house in cut-off shorts and tank tops, skin flushed from the heat. I told myself I was imagining it, the way his gaze would linger on my bare shoulders, the way conversations seemed to happen in doorways where we'd have to brush past each other, the way his voice would drop half an octave when my father left the room. But I wasn't imagining the way my body responded, the way my skin would prickle with awareness whenever he was near, the way I'd started choosing my clothes more carefully on days I knew he'd visit. The first time we were truly alone together, I was in the pool. It was late afternoon, the sun turning everything gold and amber. I was floating on my back, eyes closed, letting the water hold me. When I finally stood, pushing wet hair from my face, Michael was standing at the edge of the pool. He'd changed from his work clothes into jeans and a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He was holding 2 glasses of wine. Your father had to run to town, he said. Asked me to keep you company. My heart was suddenly beating in my throat. I'm good company for myself. I'm sure you are. He set one glass on the pool's edge near where I stood in the shallow end. But I make better company. There was something in his tone, playful but edged with something darker, that made my stomach flip. I moved through the water toward the steps, acutely aware of how the wet fabric of my swimsuit clung to my body, of how his eyes tracked the movement of water sliding down my skin as I emerged. I reached for the towel I'd left on the chair, but he got to it first. Here, he said quietly, and draped it around my shoulders. His hands stayed there, just for a moment, just long enough for me to feel their heat through the terry cloth. Just long enough for me to look up and find his face inches from mine, his gray eyes darker now, pupils dilated. Emma, he said, my name barely a whisper. Then he stepped back, picked up both wine glasses, and handed one to me. To Summer, he said, raising his glass. To Summer, I echoed, and tried not to think about how badly I'd wanted him to close that distance instead of creating more. After that, everything changed. He started appearing in the mornings, joining me on the porch with coffee. We'd talk for hours, about books, about travel, about the architecture of desire and the design of beautiful spaces. He spoke like someone who thought deeply about everything, who noticed details others missed. He asked questions about my life in London, my writing, my dreams, and actually listened to the answers. No one had listened to me like that in years. You're wasted in marketing copy, he said one morning, leaning back in the wicker chair, watching me over the rim of his mug. You should be writing things that matter, things that make people feel. Feeling things is dangerous, I said without thinking. His eyes held mine. The best things usually are. The air between us felt charged, electric. I could hear my own heartbeat. Michael, I know, he said softly. I know. But neither of us moved. Neither of us looked away. The touches started innocently enough. His hand on my elbow, guiding me through a doorway. His fingers brushing mine when he handed me something. The press of his palm against the small of my back when we walked together to his car so he could show me the plans for a house he was designing. Each touch lasted a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Each one left my skin burning. I started lying awake at night, window open to catch the breeze, thinking about him, about the way he looked at me, about what it would feel like if those careful, controlled touches turned into something more. I'd touch myself in the darkness and imagine his hands instead of mine, his mouth, his weight. And I felt guilty. God, the guilt was almost worse than the wanting. He was my father's closest friend, 18 years older than me, someone who'd known me since I was a teenager. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was wrong, but my body didn't care about rational. The night of the 4th of July, my father threw a party. The yard filled with neighbors and friends, fairy lights strung between trees, the smell of grilled food mixing with summer flowers. I wore a sundress, thin-strapped and flowing, and tried not to think about whether Michael would notice. He noticed. I felt his eyes on me all evening, even when he was talking to other people, even when I was across the yard. That awareness had become constant now, a low hum beneath my skin whenever he was near. Around midnight, after my father had gone to bed and the last guest had left, I was carrying dishes into the kitchen when Michael appeared behind me. Let me help. We worked in silence, moving around each other in the small space. My arm would brush his. His hip would bump mine as we passed. The air felt thick with everything we weren't saying. I was rinsing a wine glass when he stepped close behind me, reaching past me to set a plate on the counter. His chest pressed briefly against my back, and I froze. I could feel the heat of him, smell that sandalwood scent, feel his breath stirring my hair. Emma. My name, quiet and rough. I turned. A mistake. Now we were inches apart, the counter at my back, his body a wall of heat in front of me. His eyes searched my face. Tell me I'm imagining this. You're not, I whispered, his jaw clenched. One hand came up, hovering near my face, but not quite touching. This is a terrible idea. I know. Your father. I know. The age difference. I don't care. Something in his expression shifted, darkened. You should care. You should walk away from me right now. Should I? I tilted my face up, my lips now dangerously close to his. Is that what you want? What I want, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, and what's right are two very different things. Then tell me to stop. I let my hand rest against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath my palm. Tell me you don't think about this, about me. His hand finally made contact, fingers sliding into my hair, thumb tracing my jawline. The touch was electric. I think about you constantly, he admitted. I think about you every second of every day, and I hate myself for it. Don't. I pressed closer. Don't hate yourself. Not for this. For one suspended moment, we stayed frozen like that, balanced on the knife's edge between restraint and surrender. I could see the war in his eyes, the desire fighting with his conscience. Then he exhaled roughly and stepped back, breaking contact. Not like this, he said. Not in your father's house. Not when... He ran a hand through his hair, looking shaken. Go to bed, Emma. Please. It felt like rejection, like ice water. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and fled upstairs. I didn't see him for 3 days after that. The absence of him was somehow worse than the constant tension of his presence. I moved through those days feeling raw, exposed, ridiculous. Had I misread everything? Had I thrown myself at someone who was just being kind, who saw me as nothing more than his friend's daughter? But then I'd remember the look in his eyes, the way his voice had shaken when he said he thought about me constantly. That wasn't kindness. That was want. I threw myself into writing, spending long hours at my laptop, channeling all that frustrated energy into words. My father commented on how productive I'd become. Pleased. If only he knew what I was really writing about, who I was writing about. On the 4th day, Michael's truck appeared in the driveway. My father was inside taking a phone call. I was in the garden, weeding flower beds in old jeans and a tank top, dirt under my nails, hair piled messily on my head. Not exactly the seductive image I'd been trying to cultivate. I didn't hear him approach until his shadow fell across me. Emma. I looked up, shading my eyes against the sun behind him. He looked tired. There were new lines around his eyes, tension in his jaw. Hi, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. Can we talk? Not here. Come with me. It wasn't really a question. I dusted off my hands, called to my father that I was going for a drive, and followed Michael to his truck before I could overthink it. We drove in silence through the Connecticut countryside, windows down, warm wind whipping through the cab. He didn't speak until we'd pulled into a scenic overlook, empty on a weekday afternoon, with a view of the valley spreading green and gold below. He killed the engine. The sudden silence felt enormous. I'm sorry, he said finally, staring straight ahead. For the other night. For putting you in that position. You didn't put me anywhere I didn't want to be. That's the problem. He turned to look at me then, and the raw emotion in his face made my breath catch. You're 28 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. You should be with someone your own age, someone without all my baggage, someone your father would approve of. I don't want someone my own age. Emma, stop telling me what I should want, Michael. I'm not a child. I know you're not. Believe me, I know. His voice turned rough. That's what makes this so impossible, because when I look at you, I don't see the teenage girl I remember. I see a beautiful, intelligent, complicated woman who makes me feel things I have no right to feel. My heart was racing. Then why are you fighting it? Because I'm trying to be a good man. I'm trying to do the right thing. He laughed bitterly. I'm trying to be the kind of person who doesn't betray his best friend by wanting his daughter the way I want you. The confession hung between us, charged and dangerous. What if, I said carefully, my father never has to know? What if this, whatever this is just ours? That's not how these things work, Emma. Secrets have a way of surfacing, and when this comes out, if this comes out, it won't just be me and you who get hurt. So, what are you saying? That we just ignore this? Pretend nothing's happening? I don't know what I'm saying. He reached out, his hand finding mine on the seat between us. His fingers threaded through mine, and even that simple touch made my skin feel electrified. All I know is that I can't stop thinking about you, that I haven't slept properly in a week because every time I close my eyes, I see you, that I came to your father's house today, even though I knew I shouldn't, because staying away from you is killing me. I turned my hand in his, palm to palm, then stop staying away. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. I slid across the bench seat until our thighs were touching. You're making it complicated because you think you should. But what if we stopped overthinking? What if we just let ourselves feel what we're feeling? His free hand came up to cup my face, thumb stroking my cheekbone. You don't understand what you're asking for. Then show me. Something in him broke. I saw it happen, the moment his control finally shattered. He pulled me to him roughly, and then his mouth was on mine, and nothing had ever felt more right. The kiss was hungry, desperate, months of tension finally finding release. His hands were in my hair, mine clutching his shirt, pulling him closer. He tasted like coffee and mint and summer and desire. When his tongue swept against mine, I made a sound I didn't recognize, and he groaned in response, deepening the kiss. We broke apart breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. God, he whispered, Emma, we can't. We can. We are. I kissed him again, softer this time, but no less intense. Tell me you don't want this. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't want me, and I'll walk away. I swear I will. His eyes searched mine. I can't tell you that. Then stop fighting it. Everything changed after that kiss. Not visibly. We were still careful around my father, still maintained the appearance of simple friendliness. But underneath, we were burning. Stolen moments became our currency. His hand sliding along my hip as we passed in the hallway, fingers catching mine and squeezing, heated looks across dinner tables, text messages in the middle of the night, can't sleep, thinking about you. The knowledge that he wanted me as much as I wanted him was intoxicating. But it wasn't enough. The wanting had grown too large to contain in glances and brief touches. 3 weeks after that kiss in the truck, my father announced he'd be away for the weekend, a fishing trip upstate with some old college friends, including Michael. You'll be all right here alone? My father asked. I can cancel if... Dad, I'm 28, not 16. I'll be fine. Michael said nothing, but his eyes met mine across the breakfast table, and I saw the same thought I was having. This was our chance. The morning they left, I waved goodbye from the porch, my father's car disappearing down the tree-lined drive. I waited 5 minutes, 10. Then my phone buzzed. I'm not going. Told him I had a work emergency. Can I see you? My hands were shaking as I typed back. Yes. He arrived within 20 minutes, parking his truck down the road where it wouldn't be visible from the house. When I opened the door, we just looked at each other for a long moment, understanding that once we crossed this line, there was no going back. We don't have to do this, he said quietly. I can leave right now. We can forget. I pulled him inside and kissed him, cutting off the words. This kiss was different from the one in the truck. There was no more hesitation, no more fighting, just pure, concentrated want. His hands roamed my body, learning the curves of me through thin fabric, and I arched into his touch, greedy for more. Upstairs, I breathed against his mouth. He lifted me, my legs wrapping around his waist, and carried me up the stairs, his mouth never leaving mine. We made it to my bedroom, the room I'd slept in as a teenager, now transformed but still filled with echoes of a younger me. There was something transgressive about that, something that made the desire sharper. He laid me on the bed with a gentleness that contrasted with the hunger in his eyes. Are you sure? He asked one last time. I've never been more sure of anything. What happened next was slow and reverent and consuming. He undressed me like he was unwrapping something precious. his mouth following the path his hands traced. Every kiss felt like a brand. Every touch rewrote the map of my body. When he finally moved above me, his eyes locked with mine, and I felt something shift in my chest, something bigger than desire, more dangerous than want. Time became liquid. The afternoon sunlight moved across the walls as we learned each other, as we gave in completely to what we'd been fighting for so long. He touched me like I was something sacred, spoke my name like a prayer, made me feel worshipped and wanted and utterly undone. Afterward, we lay tangled together, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "I don't regret this," I said softly. "I need you to know that." His arms tightened around me. "Neither do I, though I probably should. Why ruin it with should?" He laughed quietly, the sound rumbling through his chest. "When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped letting fear make my decisions." We stayed in bed as the light faded, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his marriage, how it had died quietly over years of growing apart. I told him about London, about feeling lost, about coming home trying to find some part of myself I'd misplaced. "I don't think you're lost," he said, brushing hair from my face. "I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be." "Here? With you?" "Maybe." We made love again as the stars came out, slower this time, savoring every moment. And later, wrapped in sheets in each other, I felt something terrifying and wonderful expanding in my chest. I was falling in love with him. Maybe I already had. Reality returned with the sunrise. We had 2 days before my father came home. 2 days to exist in this secret bubble where nothing mattered but us. We spent them at Michael's farmhouse, where we didn't have to hide, didn't have to be careful. He showed me his drawings, his architectural models, the renovations he'd done himself. I read to him from the novel I'd been writing, something I'd never done for anyone. We cooked together, made love on every surface of that beautiful house, talked until our voices gave out. It felt like playing house, like trying on a future we couldn't actually have. "What happens when he gets back?" I asked on Sunday evening. We were on his porch, watching the sunset, my body curved into his. Michael was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. We can't just pretend this didn't happen." "No, we can't." His hand tightened on my hip. "But Emma, the reality of this, your father is my oldest friend. If he finds out, if he finds out, we'll deal with it." "You say that like it's simple." "Maybe it should be." I turned to look at him. "I know this is complicated. I know the age difference makes people uncomfortable. I know my father will probably hate you for this. But Michael, I don't care about any of that. I care about you." His eyes searched mine. "You barely know me. I know enough. I know that you listen when I talk, that you see me, really see me, in a way no one else has. I know that being with you feels like coming home. I know that I stopped. The words too big, too soon. "You what?" His voice was gentle. I took a breath. "I'm falling in love with you, and I think you know that. And I think it scares you." He closed his eyes, exhaled slowly. "Of course it scares me. You should scare me. This whole thing should scare me." He opened his eyes again, and they were full of an emotion that made my breath catch. "But the terrifying part is that I'm falling too. That I fell the moment you looked at me in that kitchen 8 weeks ago, and I've been in free fall ever since." My heart felt too large for my chest. "Then why does it have to be complicated?" "Because love is always complicated, Emma. Especially love that has to be hidden. That could destroy relationships we both care about. That might not survive in the real world outside this summer bubble." He wasn't wrong. I knew he wasn't wrong. But in that moment, sitting in his arms with the dying light painting everything gold, I couldn't bring myself to care about complications or consequences. "So what do we do?" "We're careful," he said finally. "We keep this between us for now. We figure out how to navigate this without hurting the people we love. And he paused. We see if this is real, if it's something that can last beyond summer. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the honest one. Monday morning, we went back to our separate lives. My father returned from his trip happy and sunburned, full of stories about the fish they'd caught and the ones that got away. Michael came by for dinner that night, and we performed normalcy, passing dishes, making small talk, avoiding each other's eyes. But later, after my father had gone to bed, Michael found me on the porch. We didn't speak. He just pulled me close, buried his face in my hair, held me like I might disappear. "I miss you," he whispered, "and I just saw you 3 hours ago." "I know." I pressed closer. "I know." That became our reality. Stolen hours at his farmhouse when my father was at work, coded text messages, the exquisite torture of being near each other but unable to touch in public, the constant gnawing fear of discovery mixed with the intoxication of secrecy. August arrived, and with it, the awareness that summer wouldn't last forever. My return flight to London was booked for September 1st. We didn't talk about it, but it hung over us, an expiration date on this impossible thing we'd created. "You could stay," Michael said one night. We were in his bed, my head on his chest, his fingers drawing patterns on my bare shoulder. "You could extend your trip, or just stay. Start over here." "And do what? Sneak around with you indefinitely? Never tell my father? Live in hiding?" "We could tell him, eventually, when the time is right." "When would that be? When is the right time to tell your best friend you're sleeping with his daughter?" He didn't have an answer for that. The fight started small, stress fractures in our perfect bubble. His caution felt like reluctance. My pushing felt like pressure. The age difference that hadn't mattered in the beginning started showing itself in different ways. The life experience I lacked, the divorce and complications in his past, the different stages we were at. But then he'd touch me, and all the doubts would dissolve. He'd look at me with those storm-gray eyes, and I'd remember why I'd fallen in the first place. 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave, my father mentioned he was thinking about inviting Michael on our annual end-of-summer trip to the coast. Just the three of us, like old times. I looked at Michael across the table, saw the same desperate longing I felt reflected in his face. "That sounds perfect, Dad," I said. It was a terrible idea, and we both knew it. The coast house was small and weathered, perched on a cliff with views of endless ocean. My father had been renting it for a week every August since I was a child. The place held 1,000 memories of younger, simpler times when Michael was just my father's friend and I was just a kid, and nothing was complicated. Now, everything was. We had 3 days there. 3 days of pretending to be the people we'd been before, while being hyper-aware of every accidental touch, every loaded glance. 3 days of Michael and my father drinking beer on the deck, telling old stories, laughing like they had no cares in the world. 3 days of torture. On the last night, my father went to bed early, exhausted from a day of fishing. Michael and I stood on the deck under a sky full of stars, the sound of waves crashing below. "Come with me," he said quietly. We walked down the path to the beach, not touching but close enough to feel each other's presence. The sand was cool under our feet, the ocean vast and dark before us. "I don't want you to go," he said finally. "I don't want to go either." "Then don't." I turned to him. "You know it's not that simple. Nothing about this is simple." He pulled me close, his hands framing my face. "But Emma, I love you. Completely. Impossibly. I love you in a way I didn't think I could love anyone anymore. And the thought of you leaving, of losing this, you're not losing me." I kissed him softly. "I love you too. You know I do. But I need to go back. I need to figure out my life, what I want, who I am outside of being my father's daughter or your, whatever I am to you. You're everything to me." The words should have been enough, but somehow they weren't. Because love, I was learning, wasn't always enough to overcome reality. "When I get back to London," I said carefully, "we'll have distance, perspective. We can figure out if this is real or if it was just summer magic. And then what? We tell your father?" I destroy my oldest friendship for a relationship that might not survive the fall? The words stung. Is that what you think this is? Just a summer fling? No, God, no. He pulled me closer, desperate. But I'm 18 years older than you. You're just starting your life, and I've already lived half of mine. What if you realize, once you're away from here, that you want something different, someone different? I won't. You don't know that. Neither of us does. We stood there in the darkness, the ocean roaring its eternal rhythm, both of us knowing he was right. So, what happens now? I whispered. Now. He kissed me, slow and deep and full of everything we couldn't say. Now we love each other as much as we can, for as long as we can, and we see what survives. It wasn't a happy ending, but maybe it was a real one. 2 days later, I boarded a plane to London. Michael wasn't at the airport. We'd said our goodbye in private, in his farmhouse, with tears and promises and the kind of lovemaking that feels like both hello and farewell. My father hugged me at the gate. You'll be back at Christmas? Of course, Dad. Good. Michael will be glad. He's gotten attached to having you around. If only he knew. Now, 3 months later, I sit in my London flat with frost on the windows and his last text message glowing on my phone. I'm still here, still waiting, still yours if you'll have me. I don't know if love like ours can survive distance and secrecy and the weight of everything we'd be risking to be together. I don't know if the summer we shared was real or just a beautiful illusion created by heat and proximity and wanting. What I do know is this: some summers change you. Some people mark you so deeply that you carry the shape of them forever, imprinted on your skin, carved into your heart. Michael was that summer, that person. And maybe that's enough. Maybe some love stories don't get neat endings. Maybe they just burn bright and hot and transformative, teaching us what it means to truly want, truly risk, truly feel. Maybe learning to burn is its own kind of forever. This has been an erotic romance audio story for mature listeners. If this story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more emotionally intense romantic storytelling. What would you do if you fell in love with someone forbidden? Let me know in the comments below.